Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. All of you, actually, a lot of you might recognize who I have with me is Cleo Paskal, one of my favorite Indo-Pacific experts, if I may say, and she knows the Pacific. She knows. We'll try and understand from her at least why they changed the name. That's one of the biggest things.
Am I still an Indo-Pacific expert or just a Pacific expert now?
Yeah, that's why I kind of made that face. Thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Good to be here. I've,
in
I, I,
India, I think the recognition of the Pacific and the politics within the Pacific, very few people are talking about it. And so I thought, we should learn a little more about that place as well. We are involved as well, but I thought we should learn a little more from someone who's been there. So thank you.
yeah, I appreciate it. I've just got back from a trip to Palau and Yap, which is part of the Federated States of Micronesia, and Taiwan and Guam. So we can talk about that if you like.
Yeah. Um, the first, of course, obvious question is why do you think they changed the name?
I've, I have no idea. I really, I don't know, and it's not good that I don't know because that means that there's been a messaging failure. There should have at least been some sort of discussion about it, some sort of information more than just a kind of sudden press release. Um, I can tell you from the because I talked to a lot of people in the U.S. about it at the time. It made me very I didn't like it because I remember writing about it when they changed the name to Indo-Pacific Command. And then it was very clearly explained that it was to recognize the role of India and the Indian Ocean and all that stuff. And so, if you're changing the name back, does that mean you're unrecognizing India and the role of it? Like if all you have is the press releases from the first name change, and you go back to the other one, and you don't explain anything else. And I talked to friends I know who are in the U.S. military who served in that command, and they liked it for nostalgic reasons because that was the name that they grew up under. But I just don't know. I don't know that, and we shouldn't be left to guess. There should be a discussion about it and what it means, as there was at the time when they changed it to Indo-PACOM. Oh, can't hear you.
I don't know if it's an explanation, but the only thing I can make out and what I've learned from you and, you know, my study after that is that uh, they are weak in the Pacific. The Americans are pretty weak in the Pacific. So is it because they want to focus more in the Pacific and and regain their strength in that region? I don't know. I mean, is
So,
that the reality?
so I think it's consistent with some of the previous work from people like Elbridge Colby, who's an important policy person within the Department of Defense or Department of War, as it's called now, about not U.S. not overstretching its capabilities and focusing on areas of core strategic concern, which
Mm,
is the Pacific. So it's consistent with that kind of an approach. Obviously, the command's areas of responsibility haven't changed, but there's not the vast majority of where the bases are and where things are deployed is in the Pacific, and the primary area of concern. It's primarily a maritime theater, and the maritime areas of concern is what's coming off of China. So I
mm,
don't know whether it's indicative of um, you know, i- India's such a good ally and has such a lead in the Indian Ocean that they've got that part more covered, and we'll support them there. And we don't want to look like we are a primary player in the Indian Ocean. Our primary theater is going to be the Pacific because I that's possible. But again, I'm just guessing, and I would prefer not to be guessing. I would prefer the statement to be made much more clear. Um, But I think it's more of a reflection of um, a focusing on China as a primary threat, and that primary threat in that theater is the Pacific. Uh, I mean, I have friends in the U.S. who still use Asia Pacific instead of Indo Pacific all the time, and for them, that's really how their mental strategic geography is very much that. Indo Pacific is a maritime conceptualization that is the confluence of the two seas. It's what how Abe looked at it, um, and how I think is sort of much more natural for major countries in the region like India and Japan to look at it when they're looking at each other, which was why Abe made that speech in the Indian parliament about it. But from a U.S. strategic perspective, if you're looking at an America that is prioritizing theaters, then the Pacific is definitely a higher priority. And in the context of the Indian Ocean, it's really the from a maritime perspective, it's Diego Garcia, and that's obviously having its own kind of issues now. Um, so that I mean, I think that I don't know whether that's why they did the name change, but I think that is a description, at least, of some of the strategic shift that's going on, and I see a big change in the way that the administration is engaging in the Pacific on the ground as well. Um, and I mean, you're getting like I was in Palau, for example, and Yap, and the army is sending in Oceania engagement teams, which are um, small teams, 2 to 4 people of reservists who are living in a place like Yap for a year, and just kind of their remit is to work with the society and you know, work, get us health care and things like that, just sort of ground level engagement. I think partially because it's such a acknowledged maritime and um, Air Force kind of domain that the Army wants to make sure that they're not forgotten in the Pacific and are finding different ways of trying to engage, which is very helpful. Those sorts of little engagement teams, which are out in the communities and trying to help fix stuff and build things like the CBs, that's a way of building trust on the ground. The CBs are out in that area also. So I, I'm seeing on the ground engagement, especially in priority areas like the 3 U.S. freely associated states, Palau, Federal States of Micronesia, Marshall Islands, that I haven't seen before. And I'm not seeing something commensurate in the Indian Ocean, right? Like you wouldn't send that kind of a team into Sri Lanka or Maldives or Seychelles. I mean, that's not the way the U.S. interacts with the Indian Ocean area, but it's the way that they're interacting with the Pacific. So I I don't again, I don't know why they did the name change. I'd like them to discuss it more fully, but I am seeing a much more comprehensive sort of engagement within the Pacific that is acknowledging that used in its broadest sense, political warfare, which is left of bang, all that economic warfare, all that sort of stuff is a very important component of the engagement.
So let me just take it via geography, right?
Yeah.
Let's discuss it via geography. You've got the first island chain is, of course, we all know what's happening there. But the second island chain where Guam basically sits, let's skip that and get into, so that's the Northern Marianas. Actually, let me just show people a map so
Yeah.
that we can.
You put up a map and I'll see if I can find it. I love maps.
Yeah, I can find. I know my geography in that area. Don't worry about
Oh
that.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, it's not. I've
no,
got
no,
you.
no, not that.
Right.
I'm just wanting to kind of take it so that we can understand. See, so let me just explain to the audience. This is the first island chain. You can actually see this shelf here.
Yeah,
This is the second island chain. So you can see this shelf here, right?
yeah,
So you've got
yeah.
Hawaii, which actually gets into Midway and goes right up to the Aleutians in the north. So this is another island chain here, right? This is a
Mhm.
constant, continuous set of islands here. You've got the Marshall Islands, the Carolinas, and all that, which is over here. You've got the Marshall Islands here. This is the chain here. Now, my point to you is the fight is of course over Taiwan, which is the breakthrough point.
Hmm.
But the Chinese, as you've told us, have skipped and jumped over multiple areas in this area.
Yep.
So if I want to take, let's say, Guam is a major major base, but if you, I mean, the Carolinas, Palau, and all this area, do you think that the Americans are doing something in this area to get back their control?
Yeah. So if you
Palau
zoom
is
in on, if you go back to, if zoom out a little bit and you see Colonia in between Guam and Palau, in between Guam and Palau, you've got Colonia.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I was just there.
Okay.
Colonia, this is on the island of Yap. Uh,
Mm.
the U.S. Department of Defense has announced over $2 billion in infrastructure investments are going
Yeah.
to be, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
the runway and the port. Let me just see actually if this is, yeah,
Yeah. Here's the runway.
yeah. So that runway is going to be extended, and with taxiways put in,
Hmm.
and the port is going to be rebuilt. But if you follow the road between so the port's up to the north,
Ports
yeah,
in
of
the north.
that. Yeah, it's well, if you look at the runway and then you follow the road down, if you go to Colonia town, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, go in there. Go into Colonia. No, yeah, go into there. You can see the port. Okay.
Oh, okay. Mm.
Yeah, and you see there's a bridge. I think that's the bridge. Yeah, that bridge is currently being rebuilt. Yeah, by a Chinese state-owned company. So that's and it's the same Chinese state-owned company that rebuilt the Imperial Japanese runway on Wooley that we talked about last time, if you
Mm.
remember. So they used that contract on Wooley to get a foot in the door to Yap. Yap is a state within the country of the Federated States of Micronesia, and they've been very resistant to Chinese investment. The Chinese tried to set up a major hotel that ended up getting shut down, or not being allowed to develop. And the Yappies were somewhat resistant to Chinese investment, but the island of Wooley really needed the runway built, and so rebuilt. And the federal government of the Federated States of Micronesia is very um, pro-China, and so they gave the contract to rebuild the Wooley runway to this Chinese state-owned company, knowing that nobody else could match that bid, and that allowed that company to get a foot in the door into the state of Yap. And then this ADB contract went up for the bridge, and the same company got that. And now the company is saying they're going to be rebuilding secondary roads all along Yap at the same time as the
Wow.
US is trying to put in this infrastructure. So, and that Chinese state-owned company, when I went to Wooley to go, you know, when I heard that there might be something going on, and I was there on the day of the groundbreaking for the opening of it, and they were dumping their raw sewage into the taro patches of the locals, and they've now left behind not only sealed containers that I don't know what's in them, but sunken. One of their ships sank and was leaking oil into the lagoon and contaminating the fish. They've left it behind. So while the U.S. Department of Defense War is negotiating the environmental impact assessments for the $2 billion, and the Yappies side has all of these environmental lawyers that are making them run through all of these hoops, they're not doing anything about this actual environmental damage being caused by this Chinese state-owned company that set up shop locally. So it's very active on the ground, very active. And I just sent you through text a different map if it's easy to get up, because it shows some of the exclusive economic zone component of it. Because the Google map is great for what you just did, showing installations and stuff. It's also helpful to see the exclusive economic zones.
Yep. I'll just put it up.
Yep.
Now, I just want to get back to this before
Yeah.
I want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
So this is now what to the
Yeah.
audience, Colonia, this is Guam right here, one of
Yeah.
the biggest bases of the Americans in this particular region.
Yeah.
Right? They've got
Yeah.
two runways, one major one here, which is the international airport, and another runway here.
Yeah.
And there is some military facility here as well. And a smaller one. This seems to be the Second World War sort of a facility or whatever. Right? So you can see the ammo dumps, you can see all sorts of things here. So there's a huge military facility that the
Yeah.
Americans have here.
And if you zoom out and go just to the north, you'll see the island of Tinian in the Marianas. So just below that island, that's
That's Rota.
yeah,
Rota.
go
Tinian
yeah.
is here. This
No,
is Tinian.
yeah, Tinian, no, yeah, there,
Tinian
so
is here.
there's Tinian. So if you zoom on there, that's the Northfield site that's getting rehabilitated, and which
Who's
is where
making this?
sorry,
Who's making this?
U.S. Air Force. Yeah, I
Thank
mean
God.
yeah, but if you go to the main airport, take a look at the main airport. That's also being redone. There
Okay.
are 2,000 people who live on Tinian. Does this look like an airport for 2,000 people?
Nope.
So this is also under construction now. It's also being rehabilitated. You can see the construction going on. So most people talk about the Northfield site, but the actual the main airport is also being massively rebuilt. And Tinian was the busiest airport in the world towards the end of World War II, because that's where the B-29s were taking off from to hit Japan, including the Enola Gay. That's where Boxcar, that's where both of the nuclear bombing runs took off from Northfield.
So these are very, ladies and gentlemen, these are very hard fought islands. If you actually
Yeah.
see, they're showing you Japanese coastal guns,
Yeah.
which are still there. So there's just a lot of history to this place.
Yes.
But you got so close to Guam, and still there's the, I don't know to call it laziness or what, of not looking at this. Because see, to me, this is the biggest failure of the American foreign policy is that this is sovereign American land in certain areas.
Guam is, and Tinian
Guam
is,
is,
yeah.
Tinian is, and China is so close by, and you're not able to do anything about it.
So this is I'm going to tell you a crazy story. Okay, so the Tinian is in the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory. One of the most hard fought. This is the Battle of Saipan, the Battle of Tinian, because they were part of the Japanese Empire from about 1914 until the Japanese lost. And so the Japanese set up there as part of Japan. They had very large Japanese population, civilian population, schools. The locals spoke Japanese as their second language. And then the U.S. won, and eventually that whole region that had been Japanese, part of the Japanese mandate, was given the choice of whether to become part of the United States or to become an independent country. So Palau became an independent country, for example, but Commonwealth of Northern Marianas voted to join the U.S. and it became the newest part of the U.S. in around 1976. And it was given control over its own immigration and labor laws. The labor laws were because its economy was so different from the rest of the U.S. that if it had, the same, uh, basic income for working, it just, at that point, it wouldn't work. But the control over immigration was because at that point there were about 100,000 Vietnamese refugees on Guam. Guam was the processing point for the Vietnamese refugees before they were shipped to the other parts of the U.S. And so Tinian said, "We're going to join, but we're worried that we're going to be overwhelmed with Vietnamese refugees. We're in the tens of thousands in terms of population, so we want to be able to block them coming while we set up these arrangements." That then evolved into the setting up. The Chinese are very good at finding loopholes, and they use the labor laws and the immigration laws to set up slave labor like garment factories in CNMI with Chinese labor. And then you could label the clothing made in the USA, and it could go straight into the US market. So that went on for a little while. And this gets to a very pertinent part of this, which was there were people who were trying to shut it down. And there is, if you go onto YouTube, you can find secret camera footage of one of the Chinese origin owners of some of these factories talking about his relationship with Tom DeLay, who was a major political leader in Congress, saying that Tom DeLay told him not to worry about legislation coming to the floor that would close down this loophole because, he's got it all under control. And this brings up the role of lobbyists. They had hired Jack Abramoff as a lobbyist. He later ended up going to jail for other lobbying issues. But the point is, from very early on, these problematic people within the US figured out the US system and figured out you hire the right lobbyist and you have a line right into DC. Jump ahead to now, Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands is still the only place in the US where Chinese can arrive without a visa. Still today. There was a hearing last week with representatives from all 5 US territories, including a representative from the Marianas, where he was asked by the chairman of the committee, do you think it's a great idea to have Chinese coming in without a visa? And the poor guy, because he actually has integrity, but he's working for this administration that is pushing this visa-free access for Chinese, was tap danced all around it. But this is a location where the woman that ran the Bureau of Motor Vehicles was convicted of selling U.S. driver's licenses to Chinese. They're not supposed to leave the CNMI, but they're illegally taking the boat from Rota, which we saw, which is about 60 miles away from Guam, and going to Guam. There was one specific case of a Chinese guy, came in on the visa-free access thing, overstayed his visa, then set up birth tourism centers so that Chinese could come in and give birth in CNMI to little American citizens. Then he started selling methamphetamine. Then he used somebody else's ID and went to Guam. Then he eventually ended up in Palau, where he murdered somebody. And then they caught him sort of at that point and extradited him back. But that's the sort of criminality that is coming into the region via CNMI. So one of the biggest security risks for a independent country like Palau is what's coming into it because of lax controls in the U.S. territories in the Pacific.
There is no control.
Can I tell you just a little bit more?
Yeah, please.
So this is just the how crazy is CNMI segment.
By the way, just for the audience, CNMI is the Commonwealth of the North Mariana Islands.
That's right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so it's the name of the territory. Guam is the territory of Guam. CNMI consists of the islands of Rota, Tinian, Saipan, and a few others. So there is a governor there called Ralph Torres. And when the new governor came in to replace Ralph Torres, he went on the record, this is Governor Palacios, and said, everything is gone. Even the furniture in the office is gone. There's about $1.6 billion of funding, federal funding, that I can't account for. And he went on the record saying, he gave congressional testimony saying, please send in the FBI, please send in Treasury, anybody, investigate my whole government. And because those countries are so small, or places are so small, like there's maybe 50,000 people in CNMI, he knew that one of his relatives would probably end up in this. But he was an honest man, and he what was breaking his heart was that because there was no money, he couldn't provide healthcare services to people. He couldn't pay for the country. The territory couldn't afford cancer treatments for people because money had disappeared. And he didn't want to go ask the federal government for more money when they couldn't account for all this other money that had been given during COVID and whatnot. That governor tried to get away from the Chinese tourism. And he met with the Taiwanese, and he was getting in Japanese investors, and then he died suddenly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Isn't that just so predictable?
yeah, and this is the U.S. This is a sitting U.S. governor, and there was no
This
autopsy.
uh
Yeah. So now, so
this is during Biden, right?
no, this was last year.
This is during Trump.
Yeah, it was last summer.
What a freaking dodo.
So there's this gets a little bit more complicated because anyways, let me go, because there's so many different ways this could go. There's so much craziness to it. So this guy, Ralph Torres, the former governor, had all sorts of charges against him. He cut a deal with the assistant attorney general of CNMI where he paid 20 something thousand dollars, and the assistant attorney general gave him immunity from for charges for anything that had happened while he was in government office.
How nice.
And then the attorney general fired that assistant attorney general for cutting such a bad deal. And they're since challenging that immunity, but we'll see what happens. So the question is, what happened to that assistant attorney general? That assistant attorney general stuck around. He's from the mainland, but he stuck around in CNMI, and he's now been appointed the legislative counsel for the Senate of CNMI. The president of the Senate of CNMI launched the United States' first stablecoin in Tinian, specifically for online gambling. And the partner, the guy with who he worked with for launching the stablecoin in Tinian, is a retired gigolo. Now, how do I know he's a retired gigolo? Because he was the star of a Showtime television documentary series called Gigolos.
Wow. Okay, so there's money going across doing a lot of things.
I mean, the
And
other,
nobody's talking about this in the America in the mainland America.
I mean, they just had a hearing where they asked about this. So now this gets back to the lobbyist story, okay? So for over a decade, one of the lobbyists that has been associated with CNMI, either the government or volunteer or with the Business Bureau, is a man called Jason Osborne. And Jason Osborne is has been very close friends with Corey Lewandowski. Corey Lewandowski was very close with Kristi Noem, the former Secretary of Homeland Security. And before Kristi Noem left office recently, she had a meeting, and there are photos of it online, with the governor of CNMI and Jason Osborne and Kristi Noem. And Homeland Security is actually the part of the US government that decides whether Chinese can arrive in CNMI without a visa. So she could, with the stroke of a pen, close that loophole. But she didn't. She had a very close friend who's very close friend with the lobbyist who's been pushing that. So the role of it's one of these examples where because they're so small, the Pacific Island region, you can really see how China operates, but you can also see how the US can operate or be manipulated, or however you want to put it. Everything I'm describing is legal. All of this is legal. I mean, unless something very odd happened to all the money. I mean, there were like receipts for during COVID. There was a company that was a sanitation company that was run by somebody within that Ralph Torres circle that was charging around $4,000 an hour for sanitation services. And there's receipts for that.
Can I get a job?
Exactly.
I'd look like Chinese if you want. I have no problem.
This money goes straight to the relatives, I mean, to the companies related to the families.
$4,000 an hour.
Yeah. So yeah, and they're, it's there. It's not.
This is just money laundering. This is pure and simple money laundering.
So do you
And
remember the Chinese casino that was set up in Saipan?
yeah, I know that.
Yes.
Now
Yeah.
it's not there, right? I hope.
No, it's been so it's for the people who haven't been following the intricacies of Saipan. There is a Chinese casino, actual Chinese casino owned by a Chinese company that was set up around 2014, 2015, and while supported by Ralph Torres, the same governor, who, by the way, is running for governor again.
How nice.
Yeah. And it, according to Bloomberg reporting, in the first 3 months it was open, it ran $5.3 billion through the casino. And
somebody's opened a stable coin there now.
And now they're, and they passed the legislation for the stable coin, and Governor Palacios, who's the one who died, vetoed it when he was in power. And then the legislature overrode the veto. So I think there's some delay with it, but they're in the process of setting it up.
This is just so freaking interesting. I mean, I wonder why. Okay, let me ask you this. I don't know where to even start, but is this?
I know once you get to the point of the retired gigolo, you're like, I have no idea where to go with this. But the point for me is you can try to put in $2 billion worth of infrastructure in a place like Yap, but you don't clean up the political warfare side of things, and you could end up building infrastructure that the Chinese end up using, even if you can get past all of those political warfare barriers. Right. So my point is, sure, send in, whatever you want, send in, all of those that redo the airport on Tinian, but send in investigators and prosecutors and accountants and clean up what's going up on the ground, or else your stuff ain't going to work.
So let me just explain to the audience, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
this is Guam, again, as we said, one of the biggest bases, Colonia, where a lot of Chinese are there. We spoke about the Northern Marianas here, right?
Yep.
This is Tinian,
Yep.
which is a very important base, and this is Saipan.
Yeah.
The distance is what, 100 miles?
Oh, no, it's less than that.
Yeah, so
no, it's really close.
Probably a half an hour boat ride, 1 hour boat ride.
Yeah, but about 45. I mean, it depends on the boat, but about 45 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
If you zoom in, actually, if you zoom into if you go to the Saipan, and zoom in on Garapan, which is go up a little bit. Yeah. And it's on the left side. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Zoom in. You should be able to see the Chinese casino from the,
Is this it?
No, that's a very nice resort. See, where is
Crown Plaza is here.
Yeah, keep other direction.
Okay.
To the south. There it is. That
this one.
Yeah, that kind of because it wasn't really finished. It's in the process of being finished. That's the fountain in front of it, and then there's the main building, that sort of square where you can see.
So an unfinished casino is billing $5 billion.
That $5 billion was being run out of a very small, like the size of a small restaurant across the street while this thing was being built.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was less than 20 tables were running $5.3 billion.
Yeah, I believe that. Okay.
U.S. Soil, United States of America.
No wonder they want to run away from the Indian Ocean and say,
They've
you
got a
know,
lot to do in the Pacific.
yeah,
There is a lot to do in the Pacific.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's. I've been talking about other people have also, obviously, but I personally have been talking about Chinese being able to arrive without a visa in the US for years. And every time you say it to people, they're like, what do you mean? Like, how is that possible? But it continues. And they'll say, um, their argument is our tourism is our lifeblood, and if we don't have these tourists, then our economy will collapse. But what they don't say is they actually get more Korean tourists than they get Chinese tourists.
No, get all the tourists you want, but then don't let them go to the US from there, right? It's common sense.
No, but you can't control it, because once they're on US soil and they buy their US driver's licenses and stuff, if just make them get a visa.
They
They're,
buy the US. Wow.
yeah, I mean, just why
You know,
shouldn't they have a
this
visa?
sounds like
Do you know how long this will drive you crazy, because it drove me crazy. How how do you know? Okay, how long does it take a Indian to get a B1 B2 visa appointment now?
I don't know, 1 year,
Okay. You know how long it takes if you're in Wuhan?
2 days.
Less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, I figured Americans love Chinese. That's fine. I mean,
So the
actually,
point
China.
is,
I have an idea. Why doesn't China just go there?
well, clearly they are. I mean, to a certain degree, but yeah, yeah. So the
Go there.
point is,
You know,
if
leave this area.
if you're saying that the impediment is waiting for a visa, the visa wait times are not that long. And anyway, it hasn't affected Chinese tourism in the rest of the US. They had estimated about 700,000 Chinese B1, B2 visas were issued last year for the US, or 2024 for the US. So the argument doesn't make sense. It's not that hard to get a visa. And anyway, Chinese aren't the number one tourist market, it's the Koreans. And also, you don't want to become dependent on the Chinese tourist market, because they'll do what they did in Palau, which is make you dependent and then pull out all the tourists in order to get concessions. So the whole argument doesn't make any sense unless your actual goal is to get poorly vetted Chinese a toehold in the country.
This is so amazing. This is like India, where there's a state called West Bengal, where recently one election was done.
Yeah.
The chief minister there was hand in glove with getting in Bangladeshis into the country, giving them documents and stuff. Now, the funny thing is, now they fought the election and Modi's party won that place.
Mhm.
Since they won, right, all these guys who kind of illegally entered they're standing on the border. Let us back. Let us back, because these guys are we want to go back. They voluntarily just,
Mm.
we're like, bye. But yeah, this is exactly like that. I mean, it's hmm, very interesting. Let me ask you this. So the first talent chain is holding in Taiwan, right? With Okinawa, Taiwan, and Japan. But the second island chain has been breached already.
So I think it depends on uh, your definition of
Holding
uh,
on.
yeah. And so, because there's if you take a look at the political warfare component of it, that there's a ton of penetration all the way through, like that's why if you're looking at the kinetic map and you think, we're good, we're going to put in $2 billion worth of infrastructure, and
Trump
yap,
wants. Let me just ask you this: Trump wants G2. It's a
I,
joke, by the way. But
yeah. So I go, as we were talking about before, I go by what I can see. on the ground. That's all I can do, right?
That's a good one.
I've seen that casino. I've seen photos of the people that I've seen stuff. Um, yeah, but I was there for the groundbreaking at the Woolly Eye runway. Did I ever send you that photo? Show you the photo?
No, no.
Okay, keep talking. I'll send you the photo. It's worth it.
Let me just say this. I mean,
Yeah,
Taiwan, of course, the strategic ambiguity, right?
yeah,
That's the policy, right?
yeah, yeah.
So that's still holding up. But what's the feeling in Taiwan? Have they changed their mind with regards to the American support system and the Japanese? Who, I mean, although they don't say it, but the Japanese sure do are giving very clear signals of the fact that uh, they don't trust the Americans anymore.
Well, I think so. This is actually all consistent with the national security strategy, which
Are
is
you serious? Sorry.
okay. Yeah, can you post the photo?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. 1 minute.
So this is the groundbreaking of a
Mm.
Chinese state-owned company working on an Imperial Japanese runway in Woolly Eye in the state of Yap. And uh, and we could go to the map afterwards to see where Woolly Eye is, but I think you'll enjoy this photo.
Yeah, I am enjoying it.
Okay. Now, can you zoom in?
Yeah,
Can
I
you
can.
can you zoom in to right behind the flag? Who's
Oh,
sta- who's standing right behind the flag?
didn't catch.
So that was, they were very nice. They were very friendly people. When I was there.
That's dangerous.
It's it's not. It's reporting, and the point is we're getting very little on the ground reporting, and this is the issue with AI, and with you know with thinking that you can understand what's going on at a distance is you really don't get the full picture. So that was why when I heard that this groundbreaking was gonna happen or might happen, and I talked to some people and they were like, "Don't worry, we've got it covered." I was like, maybe." But I think I'm gonna take a 4 night long boat trip and go and see for myself. And, if I hadn't done that reporting, which is then fed into the AI models, right? Because they just scrape all of the reporting. I'm not sure what would have actually been reported because they're not getting reporting from, the Chinese sources and I don't know what the Chinese sources would have said. So the point of that photo is you can't really understand what's going on unless you go and talk to people and you know, listen, mostly listen. And so that's why I think, the US Department of Defense is doing trying to do this $2 billion worth of infrastructure in Yap. And I think they're going to have a hard time doing the negotiations because I'm not sure that they are talking to the right people to get a sense of what's actually going on the ground. And if they're relying on SIGINT and AI and stuff like that, I'm not sure it's gonna do it for them.
But in the south, there's also the Fiji and that
Yeah,
entire segment, which again, uh, Vanuatu, Fiji,
yeah,
Caledonia, and all these islands which are there. Just this is south of Solomons, and I'll just
yeah.
1 second. I think it'll be easier for me to uh, give a little context with this map here. So, guys, audience, we've just spoken about this region, right?
Yeah. Hey,
This,
maybe do you wanna, see the other map that I sent you? Would that
yeah,
be
okay, sure, I'll
Oh,
show
no,
that.
no, 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 the other map doesn't cover that southern region. You're good with what you are. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've seen this region. We've
Yeah.
just seen, if you remember, Palau. We've talked about
Yeah.
Guam, Marianas, right? So then there is this string that actually goes down.
Yeah.
So this is, by the way, just for the ladies and gentlemen, geographically, these are mountain ranges.
Yeah.
Okay, these are very very huge mountain ranges which are underwater. Then you have Papua New Guinea, and then start
Solomons.
the
Yeah.
main Solomons, Vanuatu, Caledonia, Fiji,
Mhm.
and Tonga and all these islands which are there at the North
Yeah.
Fork, and then you got Auckland and
Yeah.
uh, Cook and Polynesia and all that. So this is where, by the way, just for the Indian audience, this is why the French are interested in the Indian Ocean, Indo-Pacific,
Yeah.
right? Because there's French Polynesia. About 900,000 people, 900,000 French people live here.
I'm not sure. I'm more interested. So New Caledonia is also French. If
Yeah,
yeah, and New Caledonia is where they've got that kind of very active independence movement,
yeah,
which had led to violence and stuff. So, and the Chinese are all. So we talk about that first island chain that's constraining China. This is also functionally, I think, the Chinese setting up a chain of influence to constrain Australia,
yeah.
or
They've
at
come
least
here
trying to.
already. So
Yeah.
they've come here in the Solomons.
So there's been a change of government in Solomons recently
Okay,
that is trying to gain more independence. And break away from some of that grip. I think that leadership. They were in Australia recently, and I think they might be planning trips to Japan and maybe the U.S. soon as well.
and
Um,
the Indian Foreign Minister went there last year.
yeah. So
Yeah,
the new government in Solomons is very interesting, and I sent you a couple of articles because this goes back to I'm very interested in the cognitive warfare dimension of all of this, and you rarely manage to catch the Chinese in the act on something like this, on cognitive warfare. But there's going to be a big Pacific Island Forum meeting. That's sort of the regional organization in Palau at the end of August, beginning of September. India is a dialogue partner for the Pacific Island Forum, and the Chinese are very uh, controlling about the Pacific Island Forum. And one thing that they have is three of the countries recognize Taiwan, including
yeah.
Palau. So there's going to be a Pacific Island Forum meeting in Palau, a country that recognizes Taiwan, and the Chinese are starting heavy narrative warfare to try to push Palau to try to flip. And just recently, in Solomon Islands, where the Chinese, there's a change in government, but the Chinese still have networks in place. The exact same article, exact same wording, same headline, everything, saying that Palau should abandon Taiwan in the lead up to the PIF, appeared in two different Solomon Island newspapers under different bylines with different authors' names on them. And both of those names were kind of generic English sounding names with identified with from Australia. So,
Ah,
yeah, so it's clearly, if you read it, it's very CCP type wording, you know, harmony and for the sake of community, like very, very CCP wording. And I spoke to one of the editors from one of the newspapers is very good, and as soon as they found out what had happened, they pulled it off the site immediately, which is why I took the two screen grabs. But he said that the article had been submitted by somebody they had never heard of through WhatsApp. Um, and newspapers, or they need content, so they had put it up. They made a mistake on this one, and they're very good. They acknowledged it. But it's a very clear example of Chinese narrative warfare operating through regional newspapers to try to make it sound like this is what the region wants. Very unusual to get such a smoking gun um, for
mm.
this kind of a case. I sent you screen grabs of the two different articles.
Yeah. So tell me this. I mean, what's happening as far as these? So Solomon, we've kind of seen. Okay, so there's a bit of a change of heart there.
Yeah.
What about Fiji and Caledonia and Vanuatu? Vanuatu. Yeah.
Yeah, so Vanuatu has very So the way I put it, because it's often framed as, pro-US or pro-Australia or pro-China, like that. For me, what is essential for the leadership in these countries is to be pro their own countries, and this is something that you know very well from India, right? It's not, you don't want to be anybody's vassal. And if you are functionally independent, then you're going to gravitate towards partners like Japan and India and certain degree the US and Australia, but on your own terms. You're not going to want the Chinese to come in and take over your economy. So for me, I don't look at leadership and go, are they pro China or are they pro um, Australia or pro US? I look at, are they pro Vanuatu or pro Solomons, you know, or are they a vassal? And Vanuatu is tending towards vassal. I mean, they've got a lot of Chinese influence there. New Caledonia is complex because there's that colonial component to it, and the country that's been backing the New Caledonia um, separatism operations is like it's coming out of um, central uh, Central Asia to get back at the French for having backed the Armenians. So it's like it's a whole
Azerbaijan.
yeah, it's a whole yeah, it's I didn't want to yeah.
That's Turkey.
So there's that.
That's
There's like
Turkey.
the
That's Turkey. That's
yeah,
simple as that. It's Turkey.
yeah.
It's
So
not.
there's like the Baku consensus or something. This is called something like that. That is, basically backing any group that is against the French.
Let me ask you a last question because this is just it's mind-boggling. And see, the reason I wanted to do this podcast is for people to understand that there's a whole bunch of nonsense happening in that area that, well, frankly, no media talks about. And our media is just I don't know what they're doing. But uh, do you see Trump taking any steps to work on this? Biden was sleeping. Has he woken up, or
Yeah. So
is there
I
a
don't.
realization in the Trump
So
administration?
yeah. So again, I don't know. I don't know how high up. All I can do is tell you what I see. And what I saw, for example, in the case of Palau, there were very interesting set. So what do I think would work? What I think would work is a block and build strategy where you block illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive activity while building up alternatives. Okay, so that's what I think would work. Like I said, you send in investigators, lawyers, prosecutors, you clean this stuff up so that the countries have some room to breathe and actually you develop things in their own way. So there was this set of agreements signed between the US and Palau at the end of December that it had some components of it involving deportees. That's what got the headlines, and that's another topic we can talk about it, but we don't have a lot of time. So let's get back to the interesting part for me. There was a whole build component. First, the US put in money to help stabilize the pension fund, and it promised to build a hospital. And it said it would send in people to help with cybersecurity, maritime security, border security, and going after transnational organized crime. So that is a political warfare package, and that was the first time that I've seen it kind of so comprehensively expressed. And again, this gets back to when you're looking at these very small countries, you can see how bigger countries operate. You can see how the Chinese are working, and you can see how the US is working or not working. And that was a good package. And uh, one of the issues that we saw in Palau was with the Chinese was, as I mentioned, they kind of built up the tourism sector from about 2010 to 2015, 2016, till they were the dominant sector. And then they pulled all of the tourists, explicitly saying, unless you derecognize Taiwan, the tourists aren't coming back. But the Palauans didn't give in. They didn't derecognize Taiwan. And so then the next phase was the Chinese pushed in major organized crime. including triad leaders like Broken Tooth, were operating out of Palau. Prince Group was operating out of Palau. And to destabilize the country, disintegration warfare, entropic warfare, to buy up politicians to say, okay, you don't want to play, we're going to burn you down, and then we're going to rebuild you. The thing is that they had a very good president and a very good National Security Coordination Office that started kicking Chinese out of the country. Just saying, okay, your visa's revoked, leave. We don't have the capacity to prosecute you. We don't have the intelligence to go after these complex financial crimes, but we can kick you out of the country. And so they started doing that. And the latest phase is and this is in the lead up to the Pacific Island Forum meeting, because remember, this is all going to happen in Palau. The Chinese have now offered the Palauans, they've said, look, you've got a Chinese organized crime problem. We can help you with that. Why don't you let us, our police, collaborate with your police in order to go after the Chinese organized crime? So now they're trying to use the arsonist is trying to use the fire as an excuse to get into the house.
This is just so amazing, I must say. What I learned here, and I think what I've kind of picked up from what you've told us till now, is basically there's a lot of issues in the Pacific which is unresolved, probably even understood, and the geopolitical game of the day is kind of escalating faster than the reactions are coming in.
And just to get back to the initial question of Pacific and Indo-Pacific, I think the Indian strategic community has seen a lot of this already in the Indian Ocean island countries, and are very familiar with everything I've just described. And actually, if there's increased collaboration between the countries of the willing countries on the ground in the Pacific, and I think there's a lot to be learned from the experiences that the Indian strategic community has.
Yeah. That's true. There's no question about it. Leo, thank you so much. This was very informative. I must say, people are going to benefit out of this. And the moot question is still why they've changed the name. This is just one part of the answer, probably.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on these days that I just don't know. You want to talk about CNMI? I could talk about it for weeks on end.
No, it's very interesting.
Go Google the gigolo. His name is Vin Armani.
His name is Armani.
Vin Armani. His stage name is Vin. He's retired though. Now he's a crypto king. The crypto king of Tinian.
Is the Trump family connected to him in some way?
Not that I've found yet. No.
Stablecoin. Whenever I hear stablecoin, the only thing I hear is Donald Trump.
Yeah, but he is, as I mentioned, the president of the Senate of CNMI is big on the stablecoin thing, and the sister of the president of the Senate is CNMI's representative to Congress.
How convenient.
And the husband of the representative to Congress is the chief prosecutor of CNMI.
Why don't they just buy the rotten house and say, this is mine? That's it. Leave it. Thank you so much, Cleo.
Yeah. Sorry, just quickly, just very last thing.
Please.
Yeah. The last thing is, I know so many brave, honest people in CNMI, including the late governor. And the idea that this is normal is not acceptable to me. This is like a takeover of a society that shouldn't be normalized. And there's a lot of fear in CNMI about speaking up about this. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk about it, because
no, not at all.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd love to cover this because this is something I personally am interested in because of the geography of it. to the fact that this is India is kind of involved uh, in these areas. We've got our foreign minister, and even the prime minister went to Fiji some time ago. So there is a certain involvement of India, which you can't just brush away. So I guess as the Pacific game kind of opens up,
Yeah.
this will be very, very important going forward.
Well, look at
So
where it is. Palau's just the other side of Philippines. So
yeah,
as India Philippines, gets tighter, you've got to deal with Palau. Palau's on the other side.
yeah.
As India Japan gets closer, the CNMI and Guam is just below. So you're absolutely right. It's
India,
you're
yeah, Australia, you've got Solomons and you've got
Yep.
the entire set of islands. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, this is always a pleasure talking to you and
Good to
learning.
see you.
Let me just say that. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely lovely to see you. I hope you stay well and travel well.
Thank you.
Uh,
You too.
to the audience, please like, subscribe, and of course, if you've learned something good, let us know in the comments. And what do you think about this entire thing? Does this answer your question? Why did the name change happen? We'll keep debating on this. This is, as I said, just one part of the story. There is, of course, a lot more that could be there that we don't know about at the moment, but we're just trying to understand the geography and the geopolitics of that region. Thank you. Namaskar. Jai Hind. Thank you.